good. So we're on Viewpoint this morning. Good morning, Mrs. Busby.
Hi.
A program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives.
Well, and we've got a personality here today who's going to give us a little perspective.
Yeah, right. Well,
on how
he's
it's
given us a
coming
lot of
down
perspective
here.
the whole doggone winter.
Yes. We've been perspected here in Central Illinois, haven't we, Chris?
Yeah, we have.
Well, we're glad we're going to get back to Mr. Chris Miller here in a few minutes. We're going to have Mrs. Busby give him a formal introduction. We normally start with kudos. Today I'm going to take the kudo time. This came out of a newspaper down south shortly after the Super Bowl. And you remember that magnificent rendition that girl gave of the Star Spangled Banner.
Why did they do that?
Oh, boy. Well, here's an editorial. So with all the kindness I can muster, I give you this one piece of advice to the next pop star who is asked to sing the national anthem at a sporting event. Save the vocal gymnastics and the physical gyrations for your concerts. Just sing this song the way you were taught to sing it in kindergarten. Straight up. No styling. Sing it with a constant awareness that there are soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines watching you from bases and outposts all over the world. Don't make them cringe with your self-centered ego gratification. Sing it as if you were standing before a row of 86-year-old World War II vets wearing Purple Hearts, Silver Stars, and flag pins on their cardigans, and you want them to be proud of you for honoring them and the country they love. Not because you want them to think you are a superstar. They can see from the costumes, the makeup, and the entourages. Sing the Star Spangled Banner with a courtesy and humility that tells the audience that it is about America, not you. That's pretty eloquent.
Well, I tell you, I'll go along with that. Of course, I'm not 29 anymore. I guess there's no secret about that. Yeah, well. So Chris is younger than we.
Everybody is.
Yeah, for that matter. And then we've got young Jim back there. Now, tell me, when you watch a game on television where they're singing the national anthem, does it make you cringe when they go into this business of the tune? It does not belong to that song. I don't know where it belongs. Do you appreciate that?
Not really.
Because
no, just sing it the way it should be sung. That's my opinion.
Really?
Admittedly, it's a difficult song to sing.
Right.
Certainly for a non-singer like myself. And perhaps America the Beautiful might be a little easier to sing, and is. But it is, notwithstanding all the other blandishments of it is the national anthem, and it deserves, and the men that it honors deserves the more respect. These people get up there and all these gyrations and so forth, it just turns me totally off. So anyway, I got my, I wanted to expound on that.
Well, I think you should.
Well,
who was it that was so disrespectful of the national anthem? Roseanne, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, well, what the world?
Well, now, speaking
you don't
of such
have to be
matters
crazy, but it does help, I dare say.
While I have the mic.
Oh, pardonnez-moi.
Well, you speak French beautifully.
I can also say, where is Anne? Anne is in the pool.
President's Week, we just had it here. Kids got off of school. 999% of them didn't know why the heck they were off. But that's the way things are going today. Old Tom Jefferson, pretty smart old guy.
Notwithstanding his personal life.
As Judy, well, there's that to be said, something about slaves and all that. Judy kind of gets kids me because I'm on the internet a lot, Chris, and I pick up but there are some gems out there if you're selective and go get stupid about it. Kind of try to watch what you're reading. But there's some things that came over about old Tom Jefferson. Old Thomas said, "The democracy will cease to exist when you take away from those who are willing to work and give to those who are not." Well, hello?
Would that be us?
My reading of history convinces me that most bad government results from, what do you think? Too much government.
Well, there we go.
Well, enough of that.
Do you know what the turnout was in Springfield for the primary yesterday?
No, they had a spirited mayor's race.
Yes, they did. They had several candidates. Mm-hmm. And the turnout was 6%.
6?
Yeah. As in 5, 6, 7.
It's just incredible.
Now, well, when you said democracy will cease to exist when, I thought, well, there's a good one right there.
As we had Sally in here a couple of weeks ago, we talked about, the voting percentage, and 20% seems to be kind of the norm, and it's just mind-boggling that people have no interest in the very thing that affects their everyday lives. Now, Springfield is like every city in the country almost, is a big surprise in turmoil, financially and so forth. You would think that the populace would want to exercise a little influence on who they have to run their city. And 6%.
All of those very things aside, when you break that down, it would be so interesting to know what that city that has financial trouble, I'm sure just like everybody else, what it costs that city to run that primary per voter at 6%. It would be absolutely astonishing.
They get what they deserve. And apparently nobody gives a tinker's damn down there or anywhere else when it comes election time. We'll get up and expostulate and rip this candidate or that candidate, and then don't go to the polls to express it the way it ought to be expressed.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Well, let's get to the weather. Let's beat up on this guy.
Okay. Poor Chris.
He has really made it tough for us.
I feel that we and Chris have gotten to be friends over the years because he brings his little pleasant face out here just right along, God love him. And he tells me that he does get accosted. And people say, why is this happening? Why did that happen? How come this? How come that? And now, I heard this morning on the news that San Francisco is having its first snowfall downtown in 30 years. Now that's unusual.
Well, that's not Chris's fault, because he lives here.
Yeah, that's out of town. But even more out of town is Australia and New Zealand. And I would like to know, Chris, who is, by the way, here I go, just... My dad said to me, Judy, don't let people think you're stupid. Open your mouth and prove it. I haven't even told people who our guest is. Chris is a meteorologist with the weather station here in Lincoln.
Oh, that's why he's here.
Yes, he is, and he's such a good guy. And can you tell us not only why downtown San Francisco is getting its first snow in 30 years, but what's happening that they're trying to drown everybody in Australia? I know why that country was established. Britain established it as a penal colony.
Right.
Well, that's a long time ago. They've worked their way out of that many eons ago. So I don't think we have to destroy these people.
No.
So I would like for you to address a bit of this, if you would, please, and
Sure.
thank you.
You're welcome. In fact, looking at Australia, last year, and the year before that, they were in the midst of a major drought. They had wildfires all over, burning up the country. Now they've done a complete, 180, and now they're getting so much rain that water has nowhere to go. A lot of flash flooding, unfortunately a lot of loss of life over there too.
Yes.
People drowning in flash floods. The reason they're getting so much rainfall in Australia, the same reason San Francisco is getting a little bit of snow here today, is the exact same reason why we're having the winter we're having here in central Illinois. It's all, I don't want to say blamed, but it's the cause of something that we call La Nina.
Say that again,
It's
please,
called
Rick.
La Nina.
We
La
come
Nina.
up with this.
Right.
And
La
isn't there
Nina.
an El Nino?
There's an El Nino and a La Nina.
Girls.
Right.
Uh-huh.
La Nina is just the opposite of El Nino. Essentially what you have is very cold water in the equatorial Pacific, right off the coast of South America. And when you get west of South America, right in the middle of the Pacific there, the water is colder than normal, and that's causing weather patterns all over the world to be adjusted, to change. And so when we're typically in a pattern like that, that's when Australia gets a lot of rainfall. That's when here in the central United States we get winters with well above normal precipitation, rainfall and snowfall, and we've seen plenty of that across the entire Midwest, not just here in central Illinois, but all over, from Minnesota all the way down to Oklahoma.
Up north again.
They got this past weekend. They got hit real hard, over a foot of snow, blizzard conditions from Minneapolis to Green Bay. But that's just it's that weather pattern that's causing our weather. It's the same thing causing the floods in Australia. So we didn't, meteorologists really didn't understand until the last 20 to 30 years what that La Nina really did. Because if you tell somebody, and I talk to a lot of people about this and say, well, our weather is being caused by cold water in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of South America. They say, what, you're kidding, right? You're making an excuse for why we're getting... And it's just, El Nino is just the opposite, warm water, warmer than normal water, and that changes our weather patterns the other way. So that's something that we just... It's been known for over 200, almost 300 years. The sailors, the ones that they'd go out in the ships, in fact, probably when they were establishing the penal colony in Australia, noticed that, hey, the water off the coast of South America, as we're moving our way toward Australia, it's really warm this year, warmer than normal. And the way they saw it was it affected their fishing, because fishing is a huge industry in South America. And then a few years later, oh, wait a minute, now it's colder. It feels a lot colder than normal. So they recognized this hundreds of years ago. It's not something that's just happening all of a sudden. It's just that recently we understand that it has an impact on weather patterns as well.
So the La Nina is the cold water that makes us have our wetness.
Right. Gives us very wet winters. Temperature-wise, we're all over the place with temperatures. We have these outbreaks of below zero temperatures, which we've had this winter. We also have periods of warm conditions, which we had a little bit in late December. Remember, New Year's Eve was very warm. We had a few tornadoes nearby. Around Petersburg, they had a tornado. And then again, in just the last few weeks, temperatures have been above normal. Last week it was in the 60s, so that's very common with this type of weather pattern.
Now then, El Nino, the water is warmer than normal.
Right. And
then we get dry weather?
We're usually a little bit on the drier side, usually a little bit warmer in the winter. We don't have as many of those cold, below zero type outbreaks. And the El Nino year, what you see is Southern California and Arizona, New Mexico, they get a lot of rain. And so that's when you hear about the mudslides and the flooding and things happening in Southern California when an El Nino is in place.
What makes the La Nina and the El Nino?
Just
how do it know whether to be hot or cold?
It's just the ocean currents, the waves, and the way the currents move, depending upon how strong or weak they are, determines how much cold water from below comes up or sinks much farther down and allows warmer water in the top layers. It's a very sensitive system based on ocean currents.
Yeah, I was sitting here listening to Chris, and I'm thinking of the degree of sophistication to which we have now moved in prediction of weather and so forth. Back in my kids' days, all these troops were here and there, and we had air bases here and air bases there all over the world. And they had some good meteorologists then, at that time.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, sitting here, if they'd had the degree of sophistication which we now enjoy, if there had been any change. For instance, D-Day, June 6th. That was a big question. General Eisenhower had to make that decision on that particular day. My goodness, going back, different types of predictions to see the impact that might have had in history in the world.
Sure. In fact, I read a story where the group of weather forecasters that gave that prediction to General Eisenhower, they were sweating.
Yes.
Because they knew they had tens of thousands of men's lives, not only Americans but the Allied forces, based on their weather forecast and the sophistication, the the computing power. There were no satellites. I don't know how they forecasted without satellites back then. Radar was quite new. In fact, in meteorology, we attribute a lot of the technology that we use today to the advancements made in World War II. Because in World War II, when radar was first coming out and was first being used for detecting aircraft, they were detecting things on the radar that they didn't quite understand what they were until they realized, oh, that's weather. There's storms out there. And then radar advancements and then eventually the use of satellites had a lot to do with World War II and then eventually the Korean War.
Well, how did they guess before they accidentally saw a storm on the radar?
Right. That's a really good question. What they would do is a lot of it was just looking at weather observations at other locations, islands, ship reports, and then say, okay, we know that this ship is here, it's reporting this, that weather system is coming this way at us, so it's probably going to impact us. Weather forecasting, that assumes that nothing's going to change along the way, and that's where weather forecasting
that's the oops.
That's the oops. That's where it wasn't nearly as accurate back then, because we know now that weather doesn't always go from point A to point B without changing. There's changes, subtle changes along the way can cause the weather to change.
But we're still doing one thing today that we did then. The results are a lot different because the sophistication is so much different. We used to release weather balloons from air bases every day.
Sure. And in
we're
fact,
still doing that today.
We do that twice a day here in Lincoln at our office at 5 in the morning and 5 in the evening. We've got to get that three-dimensional picture, and we knew that years ago, that tie an instrument to the bottom of this weather balloon, and it sends, using radio signals, sends information back, and we analyze those signals, and we get a picture of what is the temperature above the ground, what is the wind, the jet stream. We've heard of the jet stream that drives our weather patterns, and that's how we can determine that. And we still do that today. We as a community of meteorologists, and our agency NOAA is working on developing satellites to help to do that. But it's very difficult. We haven't come up with a real good way to do that yet, because when there's real thick cloud cover, it's difficult for the satellite to go through that cloud cover to get the information at different levels in the atmosphere.
Before we take, excuse me, go right ahead, please, Judy.
I was just going to ask you about the jet stream. It's a chicken and the egg type question. Does the weather cause the jet stream to loop way down like it does sometimes, or does the jet stream having looped way down cause the weather?
See, she's proved she's more than pretty face.
I prove I don't know anything. That's why I've got questions.
No, that's an excellent question. What actually causes the jet stream to move and to strengthen or weaken is actually, it's all related to temperature. When masses of air, we know that cold air is denser and it moves faster than warm air. It can sink and move very quickly. When that comes down from Canada, you get usually, and I'll just use the example of North America, when it surges down, then that will strengthen that wind, because there's a temperature difference between the warm air and the cold air, and that causes wind to move much quicker at a height of about 40,000 feet up in the atmosphere. And it's called the jet stream simply because that's where the jets fly, usually at that level, and they can use it to move around.
Well, that's a good factoid, too, that's where it got its name.
Yeah, but it has to do with temperature, changing the air pressure, which results in wind speed increasing.
Well, the cat is breaking into the cat house, so it's probably time that we took a commercial break at this time. Then I want to ask you a question about the recovery of these balloons and the instrumentation.
Okay.